Live from the rooftop of the Hermann London Real Estate Group in beautiful downtown Maplewood, it's the St. Louis Realtor Podcast with your host, Adam Kruse.
Welcome everybody to the St. Louis Realtor Podcast, live from the rooftop of the Hermann London Real Estate Group, beautiful downtown Maplewood, Missouri. I'm Adam Kruse, and with me, my co-host, Shannon St. Pierre.
Hello. And
we're very excited today because we have some extra special guests from Straight Up Solar, right? We've got Doug Munsch and Emma Gilmore here in the office, on the rooftop, and they're from Straight Up Solar. So, Doug, you're a project developer?
That's correct.
Okay, and Emma is the marketing, what's your title?
Assistant Director of Marketing.
And you do statewide advocacy. Mm-hmm. Right, okay, so before we jump into the solar stuff, because I know Shannon and I have a bunch of questions, and then we posted this on Facebook, and people were posting questions and stuff too. So before we jump into that, can you guys tell me just a little bit kind of about yourselves and the company?
Absolutely. And thank you, Adam and Shannon, for having us this morning. So my name's Doug Munsch. I'm a project developer with Straight Up Solar. I've been with the company for a little over 3 years now. And initially I got involved with the company because I was actually the yoga instructor of our HR. And so we both lived in Lafayette Square, which is one of my favorite areas, a ton of beautiful architecture. And I had always had an interest in solar. I definitely believe that new and upcoming technologies are best left in the hands of thousands of people with competing interests who all want to serve the interests of people who want renewable energy, who want to find ways of lowering their utility bills. And through that, I got myself educated in the solar industry. I had sales experience in the construction industry, and so I transferred that skill set from one construction trade into energy and the construction trade within energy. And since that time, I can tell you a little bit about Straight Up Solar. When I first joined Straight Up Solar, which is founded in 2006, we were at about 19 people at that time, and we're a little over 50 right now. We do residential installations. We do commercial installations. We have some agrarian projects for corn farmers and hog farmers. And so long as things continue to go well, we should be slated to do what I would call small-scale utility solar, which we're looking forward to. And we operate in Missouri and Illinois.
So what is agrarian?
Agrarian.
Agrarian.
Yeah, agrarian. Farmers.
Farmers, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And Emma, do you want to tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. So I got into the solar industry by starting off, I pursued a degree in renewable energy from Illinois State University, and then I went on to get my master's. And while I was in school, I linked up with our director of business development at the time, Shannon Fulton, and I interned with her. And so I basically started off as a business development intern about 4 years ago, around the same time that Doug started out at Straight Up, when we were just 19 people. And I stayed on. I was lucky enough to, see the company grow throughout the past 4 years or so. And I've always enjoyed connecting with people who have adopted solar energy and renewable energy. Wind is pretty big where I come from, as well as home, residential and commercial solar. So it's definitely growing from a smaller group of homeowners and folks in the Midwest to, your next door neighbors. You might see them getting solar in the next few days. I've gotten involved in advocacy with the Illinois Solar Energy Association, and just really enjoy the outreach and connecting with the public, and like Doug, kind of sharing information, educating people on solar energy. And that's a big core value of Straight Up Solar, and I think of the solar energy industry right now is education. We need to focus on that, making sure people who are interested in purchasing solar or in adopting solar are armed with the information that they need to go into that decision. So
we appreciate you guys being here because, and like you said, education is obviously really important to you guys, but I'm sitting here realizing as realtors, we go out and we see houses that have solar, right? I think we see commercial. I drive down Manchester and I see businesses that have solar.
Yeah, I feel like it's more commercial, not so much residential.
You see it sometimes in residential, but at least I, for myself, I don't really know a lot about it. And so we're excited to learn more about it today. And I've had clients ask, like, does that add value or does it take away value from the, as realtors, we're going to start having to consider that in the pricing of properties and that type of thing. So we got to learn about it. And so I'm glad you guys are here today. Let's just jump into it, right? So there's different types of solar, but in general, why should someone get solar on their roof? And is it always on the roof? And does anyone ever get wind? Is it all about solar now for residential especially?
Straight up solar is indicative of precisely what we do, which is it's straight up solar. And so
right.
Naturally, every now and again, there's someone who's interested in wind. We have some solar customers who already had wind, but it tends to be especially niche, and we really don't get involved in wind. Now, I have to backpedal a little bit on the name straight up solar because naturally the other component of this is batteries, and that is a market that will, to some extent, have a similar trajectory as solar itself. So we do have solar plus storage projects that we've done. And to your question about is solar always on roofs, what we also see is ground mounts. So if someone has, now this isn't going to be your typical suburban solar client. This is going to be somebody who lives out, who has, probably 4 or 9 plus acres, or if they are a farmer, they have essentially just a metal structure out in the field, and we install solar on it, and that can be 100, 200, 400, 600 feet away from their property. The majority of those who do go solar, it is on top of their roof, whether it's a pitched roof or in your areas like the Shaw neighborhood or Tower Grove, it's going to be your flat pitched roofs on your 2 or 3 story home.
And so are there financial benefits to going solar, or is it mainly people who just kind of care about the environment? Or
it's a blend of both. We can talk a little bit about financially what solar looks like in a nutshell here in the Missouri market. We can also talk about environmentally what's involved in the environmental benefits. Emma, maybe I'll talk a little bit about financially what a homeowner can expect for solar, and then if you want to take on the environmental part.
Sure. Yeah, we'd love that because sure. I know there's people listening that are considering getting solar, right? And we've probably, especially myself, I've always sort of wondered about it. And I've kind of wondered, can I do that in St. Louis? We're not in Arizona or California, right? And then how much is it going to cost me? Aren't there like governmental programs and stuff like that? So I know you guys are going to get into all that for us. Yeah, rebates and things like that.
Correct. And so I'll start with the topic of sunlight, right? St. Louis, Missouri is not Boulder, Colorado, right? Boulder, Colorado has over 300 sunny days a year that are at a higher altitude. There's less atmosphere for the sunlight to travel to. However, St. Louis does have as much sunlight as portions as Florida, because Florida is hot, but also Florida has all those afternoon storms that come in and all those cloud coverage. So if you think about the market globally, you also have a ton of solar in areas like Germany, right? And St. Louis has more solar, more insolation levels than we do in Germany. So there's plenty of sunlight here. I mean, there's certainly some technical components where we can get into the weeds, but you probably have to have a pillow to some degree to have me go through those details because you can get a little sleepy.
Sure.
It can get I think a little more detailed than I think is necessary. But for the most part, there's a ton of sun here, right? We can still get sunburns, so solar can be good for a home. Financially, here's a quick overview of what solar looks like.
Okay.
With the incentives here in Missouri. So solar, I would say, is akin to like buying a car in terms of cost. Depending upon the kind of car you get, how big it is, and then what kind of bells and whistles you would add to it. Typically, solar ranges anywhere from, $14 to, I'd say, $36,000, $40,000, depending upon your system size. There's obviously exceptions to the rule. Sometimes it costs less. Sometimes it costs more. It all depends upon
what you're trying to power.
Yeah, what you're trying to power, how big the system is, how labor intensive the particular project is. So,
can I ask a quick question about that?
Yeah.
Has that gone down, and B, will it continue? Assuming that's sort of a yes, will it continue to go down the more people that do it?
Correct.
The cost.
Yeah, there's a couple factors that influence the cost globally. What I can tell you is when Straight Up Solar started 12 years ago, the installation cost was about $11 a watt, and the actual solar module itself was $4 a watt. So if you had a 200 watt module and it's $4 a watt, the module would have been $800. Now what you have is, so again, keep in mind the installation used to be $11 a watt. Now what we have roughly is the installation is about $3 a watt.
Wow.
And the solar modules previously were about $4 a watt. Now they're about 50 cents a watt.
Holy cow.
Plus or minus.
Technology's gotten better. Is that right?
The industry went through a similar experience as what they did with like beta tapes and VHS, right? Like the industry was trying to figure out like which technology is going to be the one that's deployed most often. And eventually they settled on the manufacturing process. And the industry knew that like this is the product that's easier to manufacture and they could really ramp up production. And then a demand in Germany and Japan helped the standard operating procedures for those manufacturers. And so the cost really dropped considerably, especially around like 2008 to 2013. The prices really, really dropped. So that's where the cost is of systems. So financially, what people have available to them right now is a 30% federal tax credit. Now this tax credit was actually started in the Bush era. It was continued during the Obama era. And it managed to, as a result of the Paris Accord, it was continued as well. So you had the 30% federal tax credit this year. You had the 30% federal tax credit next year, 2019. And then in 2020, it ramps down to 26%. And then in 2021, it ramps down to 22%.
So just to clear that up, if I buy a $20,000 solar system that includes installation from your company, then I can take what would 30% of that be? $6,000, and I can that just reduces my tax burden by $6,000.
Correct. Nailed it.
Okay.
I mean, that's pretty hefty.
It's a chunk of change. I mean, it helps. And
so, are there other rebates even locally? So this is a federal tax credit. Are there state credits or rebates or incentives of any sort?
There are, and to provide more backstory to it, and there's like a fun little anecdote about this. The rebate initially was a result of the 2008 Proposition C. And Proposition C was really spearheaded by Aaron Noble and PJ.
Yeah,
PJ, who was with Renew Missouri. And so Proposition C was a ballot initiative, and like a lot of ballot initiatives, it took a lot of interest and a lot of elbow grease on the part of the renewable community to have the citizens of Missouri say, yes, we want more renewable energy. And so Aaron Noble would go outside of Cardinals games and look for, poetically, all the smokers who were taking smoke breaks. And she'd walk over, to them and with their clipboard, and she would get them to sign this ballot initiative. And that was her most beneficial clientele, so to speak, in getting signatures on the clipboard. So through Proposition,
kind of ironic.
Yeah.
So you really think about that.
Yes, Missourians owe our improved air quality as a result of cigarette smokers. Clean air brought to you by Marlboro.
Not a tagline I thought I'd hear.
No. But hats off to her and a lot of the folks back in the day. And so Proposition C started in 2008. It ran for a couple of years. The rebate ramped down. And so now this upcoming rebate is being reinstated. And for construction projects starting in 2019, from January to June, it's a 50 cent a watt rebate. So if you have a 10,000 watt system, a 10 kW, it would be $5,000 off of that. So you have the 30% federal tax credit and the 50 cent a watt rebate to reduce your total project cost.
Which is cool because I think you said now you're paying 50 cents per watt for the equipment, right?
Correct. Yeah, well, for the solar modules.
The solar modules.
So basically you're just paying the installation.
installation and the other balance of systems, wire, inverter, that's a critical technical component that is another piece of technology that actually receives all the energy that is direct current, right? When we plug our smartphones into our outlets, that's operating off of alternating current energy. So the inverter receives the direct current, and then it converts it into alternating current. And so that's another critical component of the installation.
Okay.
So let me ask I love how we're just kind of jumped into the financials here, and that's what everyone seems to, that's what they want to know, right? What's it going to cost me? And then, so now we've kind of talked about that, but what's it going to save me? Am I going to save on my monthly utility bills? I guess that's the whole point. Well, until we get to the environmental points, but the financial side, that's the whole point, right? Is I'm saving monthly?
Yeah, you're saving monthly, right? So the idea is right now everyone has the same supplier of energy, and what you're doing is you're augmenting or you're replacing your existing energy provider, and your new provider is the sun. And so the energy that's coming out from the sun could be less than the amount of energy you're currently paying. So if I have, and we can also get into the real estate side of this, which is what happens when a homeowner already has solar, right? What's the value added to the home, and then what happens in the sales process when the home already has solar. So for some individuals, solar can nearly eliminate their utility bill, right? There's always a meter fee, like there's always a cost to be a customer, but then you're also paying for the energy itself. So most of our customers, their utility bills are being reduced, 75, 85, 95%.
So how long do you think it typically takes the average residential consumer to realize their investments?
With the 30% federal tax credit and with the rebate, I'm going to say the average falls around 11 years.
Okay.
And so the comparison I always like to make, it's like a medium term treasury note, right? It's about, say 10 to 15 years to get your money back, and your internal rate of return, which is different than the return on investment, tends to fall between, I'd say, like 5 and 7% internal rate of return. But that's great too, because that that investment, and this is a perfect segue into the environmental component, right? That investment meets people's financial needs to lower their utility bills, right? Every appliance you buy in your home, it sucks energy out. This is the one appliance you buy, you plug in, and it sends energy in. And it can also meet people's environmental goals.
I like that analogy, the appliance. Mm-hmm. I don't think that we think of solar panels as an appliance, but yet we'll go out and buy a really nice stove for $5,000-$6,000 easily, right? Mm-hmm. Yet we balk at $10,000 for a solar panel, something that actually pays us back and lasts longer than that stove actually probably does. So I think that's an interesting way to put it, and a different mindset.
But
altogether,
if someone would have bought this, bought solar for their house 11 years ago, by now they probably would have been somewhere breaking even. Sure, it's a little bit different with the different rebates and all that stuff. Has technology changed? Like if we buy it today, should I be worried that 11 years from now there's something totally better and I'm just going to want a whole new system anyway?
Or the 11-year-old system is not going to hold out as long as today's systems. Better yet.
Yeah, great question, and we get that frequently. And like any new piece of technology, you can wait as long as you like, or that what we have available to us today meets your needs, and that you can capitalize on it. The improvements in solar aren't going to be so radically different where if an individual waits, all of a sudden the cost is 75% lower and the item produces twice as well, twice as good as what it did initially. So there are improvements. Costs are continuing to go down, and I think that timetable of knowing that next year is the last year the tax credit's at 30%, and the rebate, there's $5.2 million of money in the pot, and so between the first half of 2019, everything tells us that is the ideal time for the Missouri buyer to go solar. Otherwise, you're having to, unless you're a Moody's analyst and you're really looking down the pipeline of, what the market is going to give to people who are interested, right? That's the bird in the hand.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you kind of briefly mentioned, I guess you can talk a little about real estate sales and stuff. What happens when someone installs a system and then 3 years later, wants to move? How does that? What have you seen happen in those cases? I don't think we've ever sold a home.
I haven't.
Either with solar or we haven't. I guess we may have that I just don't even know about. Like we didn't make a big deal about it, but I guess there's some sort of agreements between people because the buyer's really getting a lot of benefit.
Absolutely. So I think it's a marketing thing, but is there, you did mention that there's a piece of the sales process. Is there a transfer of ownership when it comes to solar panels and the energy box that it collects and uses?
Yeah, yes. And I do want to touch on that, although I do want to pass over the opportunity to talk about the environmental component, right? Because we are a solar company. We are here to meet people's financial interests, but the heart and spirit of this company really all started out to bring more renewable energy to the world. And coincidentally, it is also financially advantageous for people too. So I want to give Emma an opportunity to talk about what kind of environmental benefits a homeowner or a business receives in going solar.
Where am I currently getting my energy from? I pay my bill to Ameren, but where are they getting it? And I'm assuming that it's not a great system for the environment.
Correct. So from a water perspective, from an air perspective, just for our quality of life in this region, the mix of energy generation is, very dependent on coal, especially in Missouri.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very highly coal dependent. We also have a mix of wind coming online as well, and some natural gas in there too. In Illinois, it's about 50%. It was about 50% nuclear, 50% coal. And there are more, chunks being taken out every year in terms of natural gas generation coming online, as well as wind and solar. So
it's a mix of resources.
Yes, exactly. And so we have, we have our baseline resources and we have our renewable resources. And it's actually funny, we were at a Green Business Challenge about a month ago, and it was presented by Ameren, Missouri. And Representative Gwen Mizell, she was speaking about, Ameren's long-term plan to bring more renewables onto the grid, to just improve the environmental attributes of our energy supply. And so solar panels, of course, produce electricity. And so we rely on not just electrical power plants for our energy usage, but also gasoline for our cars, and we rely on the natural gas system for much of our home and building heating. Mm-hmm. So just to make a note, the solar electric PV systems, PV is for photovoltaic, and photo is photons from the sun produce electricity. Voltaic is the electricity portion. So these photovoltaic PV panels, they produce electricity for our homes and businesses. And, we're also seeing larger solar energy installations come online, not just at, agrarian systems like Doug was talking about. Farms and businesses are typically larger solar electric systems, but also, utility scale systems like Ameren, Missouri, mm-hmm. and other state utilities would bring online. And so there's a clear environmental benefit. We have, carbon emissions, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, and it's kind of cool when we produce a proposal for a homeowner. We have a page that's dedicated to the environmental benefits. And, we say an average 7.5 kilowatt system, right? We rate these systems in thousands of watts of solar installed, not to get too wonky and technical. But, mm-hmm. 7.5 kilowatt is, I'd say, our average size system. Is that right, Doug? And so, you look at what that system is going to save in terms of carbon dioxide emissions and even water savings from those electric power generation systems throughout the 25-year lifespan. And you can compare it to thousands of acres worth of forested trees grown throughout that time. Yeah.
A 10 kilowatt system over the course of 25 years will save about 300,000 pounds of coal from being burned.
Holy cow.
If you look at, any...
And that's just that's the typical size for a homeowner?
I'd say...
I mean, it's a little less, I think, as you alluded to, but...
A little larger than the national average, but we certainly have homeowners with 16 kilowatt systems. And so if you think... I always like to think about your old image of a father and son walking down the Shaw neighborhood back in the day with a wheelbarrow and a bunch of coal and a shovel. They'd go house to house with their little baggies of coal, and they'd throw it in the coal chute, right? And so our modern-day homes with air conditioning and lighting, over the course of 25 years, just think of the pile of coal you would need on, say, like a parking lot across the street just to power that home for the next 25 years. And that's over 300,000 pounds.
And I think that's part of it is we don't have these visual reminders of the impact that we have when we use the electricity in our homes. How else do you help homeowners see the benefits environmentally?
As I was saying, when we make the proposal, we kind of show them how much, of their footprint they can offset in terms of environmental attributes. It's really funny because behavior does change when someone goes solar many times, right? So just to kind of talk about that for a second, it's funny. So you have those people who have very low electrical usage in their home. They're very energy efficient. And by the way, that's the first thing you want to think about when you're thinking about solar, right? Is energy efficiency. You want to consider everything that you've done in your home to make your home more energy efficient. Because we always say the cheapest kilowatt is the one that you don't use, kilowatt hour.
So, and when you say more efficient, you're talking about insulation.
Yeah.
Better windows, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Lighting, appliances.
LED lights.
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes after somebody goes solar, they tend to reduce their electricity usage. Sometimes they increase their electrical usage, right? And so there are actually, when we install a solar energy system, we add on production monitoring. So you can actually see in pretty much real time what your solar energy system is producing in terms of kilowatt hour energy. And occasionally, a homeowner or business will elect to also add consumption monitoring so that they can see what they're actually using in comparison to what they're producing in their solar energy system. And so, they can kind of tell whether their consumption has increased when they've gone solar or decreased. But yeah, many people think about energy efficiency first.
When you put one of these panels or a bunch of these panels on somebody's roof, does it actually prolong the life of their roof because their roof's getting less of a beating from the sun and the rain and whatever?
And I guess that's kind of a question too. A concern that's come up is what if my roof is mid-year? These have a life expectancy, which you've said, I think, a couple times, of 25 years.
Correct. Okay,
so for 25 years, you have solar panels. My roof is, say, mid-year, going to need to be replaced within 5 to 10 years. How is that handled, and how do you address that?
It's a balancing act. You have to develop realistic expectations about the homeowner of what that means for them. So, Adam, you're right in that if you have solar on one half of the roof, it's the solar modules that are going to be bearing the brunt of weather, of the sunlight, of the rain, and at least that half of the roof is going to be protected by solar modules. Now, if I have a homeowner and I talk to them and they say my roof is 17 years old, the expectation is that, give them another 7 years or so and they're probably going to have to re-roof anyway. So at that point, they want to take the initiative to remove the existing shingles and add new ones. Then now they have this nice clean roof ready so that by the time the modules 25 years later are ready to be removed and reinstalled, so are the shingles. Now if someone's at a midway point, the process of removing the modules and reinstallation is something that we do all the time.
Okay.
Both with our own installations, and again, as we've been around for 12 years and we've done over 1,000 installations, as companies have come and gone, Straight Up Solar has been there to do remediation work on other projects and removals and reinstallations. So that's a really good question.
Okay.
Thinking ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
So is it expensive to uninstall and reinstall? I mean, are you paying the same original installation costs, or is there,
It's about $100 to $150 per solar module. So if someone has 20
Okay.
of them, and it's a one-story home, and it's a nice shallow pitch, and it isn't too difficult for someone to move around the roof, $2,000 to remove and reinstall, roughly.
which isn't bad?
Yeah, not bad. And usually that removal process is done as part of roofing too.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, so let's kind of take a step back, I guess. If you want to give us like the 101 on solar energy, right? So everyone sees the thing on the roofs, but if they're like me, they have no idea what else is happening. Are there wires coming off of that's connecting to like my electric panel, or is there some sort of box, I guess, that's magic is happening in? Can you give us kind of the 101?
How does it deliver it to the home?
Yeah.
So you want to know about the magic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about the
How
magic.
the magic happens. I can do that. Let me get my wand. So yes, the solar modules on top of the roof or out in the field, they are receiving the photovoltaic energy from the sun. Solar module is really just like a battery, right? It's sand. It's doped with boron, and I forget what the other one is. Phosphorus, right? So one end is positive, one end is negative, and then there's metal junctions between the solar module. So when one end is excited, there's the electrons that are going to travel through the pathways within the solar module. And this is all direct current energy, right? And so as the energy is flowing from one module through the next module and the next module and the next module, they're all meeting at a central point, which is a combiner box. And so that combiner box is collecting the series of energy generated by all the solar modules, say it's 26 of them, to that central junction box. And then from the junction box, it's going to go to the inverter. And the inverter is really where the magic happens, right? Because that's the component that both receives the direct current, changes it to alternating current, sends that alternating current to your electrical box. And it's your electrical box, your electrical panel, that has your main breaker and your breakers to, your lighting, your receptacles, to your air conditioning. And so on a day like, today we're looking out the window and it's probably, getting close to 90 degrees, maybe some clouds in the sky. You know that when, say we had solar on top of this building right now, there's this light above our table. Mm-hmm. Well, that light under these conditions would be powered by the photovoltaic energy of the sun.
Wow.
And so let's say, for example, that it's Sunday and everybody's out of the office and you have the solar on top of your roof and you have all this energy being generated. Well, the question is, where does it go? And the immediate answer is to your neighbor, right? Because if you're out of town or you're out of the office and it's Sunday, but your neighbor is next to their home, in their home with the lights on, with the air conditioning on, electricity goes to the path of least resistance. So if it has nowhere to go in your home, it's going to travel not to the electrical panel, but it's going to actually flow out through the inverter to the meter, right? And so the meter, if you go solar, Hermann removes the existing meter that you own and they replace it with a bidirectional meter. And so if you look at that bidirectional meter, there's a little LCD screen. And so if you're not in the home and you're generating all this energy, you'll actually see this arrow pointing backwards, and that shows that you're feeding energy back out to the grid. And so now that energy is just going to go to your neighbors. So unbeknownst to your neighbors, there are periods of time at which you are delivering energy to them. At the point of generation isn't the coal plant, 120 miles off the distance.
So neighbors can actually benefit from their neighbors' solar panels. Now, does Hermann give a rebate or kind of any...
Their conscience can be soothed knowing that their neighbor has now provided them energy.
So you basically got the rebate when you installed it.
Yeah.
And so
that's what I was asking, is if there's a reduction in the utility bill because Hermann's not supplying the energy, but a solar panel is.
No. So essentially those electrons are going to be delivered to your neighbor, and Hermann's still going to because that electron is going to flow into your neighbor's meter, and so Hermann can still count. That was an electron that was sent to your your neighbor's meter and house. They'll still get charged for it. What you do have is what you call net metering. And so what happens is if you generate energy, say on a Sunday and you're not there and it's sunny, well then when you come back on Monday, say Monday is cloudy and now it's raining. Well, your solar array is not going to produce anything if it's a really cloudy, rainy day. So what does that mean? You're now paying for all this Monday's energy use, but you can say, well, what I have is a solar array that produces energy for me on Sunday. So what you do is you get to use Sunday's energy production to pay for Monday's energy use, and that's called net metering. And so there's more details about that we can talk to, and part of straight up solar is making sure that the financial modeling is sound to what happens when you use instantly what you've generated, and then what happens when you produce more than you use. And there's some financial consequences to generating more energy than you use on a monthly and an annual basis. But that's kind of a weedy detail that I get into at the kitchen table conversations, but probably not necessary right now.
Okay.
I think everybody's first introduction to solar was probably on their calculator, right? When they were in second grade or whatever.
The Texas Instruments.
Texas Instruments, baby.
Yeah.
Is it the same technology in the calculator that it is on the roof?
It would have to be, right?
Oh, I like it. We stumped them.
I think it's different technology.
It's different
actually.
technology.
Yeah, I think so. So Doug was talking about the crystalline silicon cells are really the foundation of the technology that we've been using for the better part of maybe 30 or 40 years now. So really has become more popular in the past 10 to 20 years. But yeah, that crystalline silicon is the old standby. And
so do you see a trend with the introduction of electric cars, people putting not necessarily solar panels for their home, but for the garage, just a much smaller scale, just to power the car, because that would be the point in the first place, is less impact on the environment, right, with these cars? Do you see a trend in that way?
I mean, this would be a perfect example to talk about what it means for a homeowner to sell a home that already is solar, because I've had precisely this instance with a homeowner who had both solar and the electric vehicle, and they were selling their home. So I could use this as like a platform to talk about that and what it means for someone who either already owns solar and is considering selling their home, or somebody who's in the market to buy a home and now there's a home with solar on it.
Okay.
So what I can tell you is we have one client with a home in Glendale, and he had solar installed on his home. And then after he had solar, he also had an electric vehicle. Mm-hmm. So there's certain times of the day where he knows that solar is acting in two ways. One, solar is now like a tiny power plant on his home, powering the lights in his home. And solar is also like a fuel station, where he's not driving his vehicle down to Phillips 66 to fill up. He's just got his Phillips 66 in his home, so to speak. Only it's not liquid gas. It's solar energy, and that's where he's plugging his vehicle.
That's a pretty cool guy, huh?
Very cool guy. And then we love him because he went solar twice, right? And so he sold his home that already had solar on it, that already had the electric vehicle charger ready to go for the prospective buyer, and then he was moving into another home into Glendale, and he built that home with a roof line optimized for his second solar installation.
Okay.
And so there's this question, which is how do real estate agents think about solar? And the immediate answer is they're typically not quite sure what to make of it, right?
Exactly.
I mean, like they know what to think about pools. Now
Sometimes.
Sometimes. And please chime in. My view with pools versus solar is pools aren't necessarily looked at with concern. Although we all know that pools are a money suck. It takes maintenance. You got to fill it up. You got to clean it.
And there's definitely safety concerns.
And there's safety concerns, right? Now, you already had to build a fence around it. You got to think about kids. And with solar, I can tell you sort of anecdotally two stories about it. But one, it was this individual who had solar in his home and had the electric vehicle charger. In his and I conversation, he told me that when he had an open house, he would print out his utility bills and he'd put them on the table. Mm-hmm. So that way, if someone's looking at one home in Glendale that's 2,600 square feet and his house that's also 2,600 square feet, and the two are comparable in price, but the one without solar has an annual utility payments of maybe say $1,300 a year, and his was $8 a year. Solar in that sense, that's over $1,000 a year in savings because he has solar. And as he said, he didn't need 1,000 buyers for his home. He only needed the one.
Well, yeah, I do think that there's not only the financial benefit to the solar power, but also you have a pretty good trend, and you do have a good following of people who are environmentally conscious, and that in of itself is a benefit. A home that's green, the green homes that they're building, but a home with solar panels still provides some aspect of that. So there is, I think, a huge benefit to solar panels when it comes to real estate. It just depends on how you sell it.
Can we take a second here to, I think, people are probably wondering what solar system they should get and that kind of thing. And basically, I'm guessing what we would suggest is that they call you or contact you, right?
Correct.
So can you guys kind of give your contact information or whoever you would want them to call from Straight Up Solar? Which, by the way, I went to straightupsolar.com. I'm loving this website.
Thank you.
I want to know who made the website, and it's you made that site?
Emma had a big role in it.
It's awesome. It's a really good site.
I will give a shout out. It was a local web development company, Go Brain Go. They helped on our
Go Brain Go did it? Okay.
Yeah,
I know those guys.
Yep, we worked with them for a long time. There's so much information on there. It was a struggle to cut information. Can I let them know who to contact?
Fire away.
Okay. So we've got a great team of solar support specialists at Straight Up Solar. And to get a hold of them, you can call locally 314-218-2663. And, someone named Bob or Natalie will most likely answer the phone. We also have a toll-free number for anyone who's, wants to make use of that. It's 844-97-SOLAR.
So is the process, call them, Bob or Natalie would come out to the house, kind of evaluate your roof, talk to you, and go over the details about the size you would want, the financing options, and all this kind of thing?
Yeah. So they would, when you get a hold of them, they will kind of visit your house virtually. So they would most likely, be on the phone with you. They would like to know your street address so that they can use Google or the online mapping system to locate your home from a satellite view. And then, sometimes those maps mislocate, so we like to confirm the exact location of the home.
Isn't that energy efficient of them not to drive all the way out to the house?
Trying to save.
Precisely.
Look at that.
Energy here. And the other, so confirming the location and, the roof line, if it's a roof installation, as well as, any available ground space or possible tree cover or any other factors is important. So that's why we like to know the exact location. And then, if you have a copy of your electric bill, you can usually take a picture of it and send it to us at hello@straightupsolar.com or through our website. We have a couple different forms on there.
Okay.
We also have a calculator.
Yeah, we do have a calculator
on there that people can play with.
Yeah, we have a residential and a business version of that.
A solar calculator is what you call it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you put in your estimate of your monthly bill and then your utility, and then we can tell you how your utility will credit, through net metering, credit your solar energy production and give you some basic benefit information about the system that way. And for us to get started on a quote, it really is important for us to know your electricity usage and to confirm that, because if you decide to go forward, we want to make sure that we're sizing the system correctly and we don't want to go, off in the wrong direction with your usage. So,
well, I have kind of a half a page of questions left. You guys still have a few minutes to keep talking?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So one thing that you mentioned on your website is energy independence, right? And we've sort of talked about houses and commercial and stuff so far, but are you getting a lot of people like Lance doing cool things like powering their van or their RV if they want to go boondocking? I've been watching a ton of YouTube videos about living off the grid and stuff, and I'm super interested in it. Is that a thing now, or are people doing that?
Every year we have a couple projects that are unique in that way. The majority of our installations are a grid-tied system where someone's already pulling energy from the utility company. So we probably have a few pet projects where it is a cabin off in the woods and they have solar plus storage. And then, Lance is perhaps, traveling the country right now.
Yes.
With his solar modules on top of his RV.
So he can make his morning coffee wherever he is.
Isn't life
And
grand?
the point of his solar panels is to power the appliances within the RV.
Correct.
So he doesn't actually have to plug in, go to a campsite or anything of the sort. Is that
if you want to keep like a little refrigerator or something like that in your van, then, how are you going to get the power for it, right?
He's got a little battery in it, too, to power the refrigerator at night, yeah.
Around 10 years ago in my old subdivision, someone, they were kind of like down on a hill, and they put solar on their house. And the neighbor up on the hill that had to look down on that was really unhappy, and they got in this big like neighborhood dispute and stuff like that. So I'm guessing you suggest people check with their municipality, their homeowners association, right, before they do it, because there's probably rules. Is that right?
Yeah. Actually, there was. So it's very important to, check your homeowners association guidelines. Maybe walk next door and talk to your neighbor and kind of get them primed for these beautiful solar panels that are going to be on your house. We have also, and I know that, we and the industry as a whole, we are generally very willing to do presentations to organizations, homeowners associations, municipalities, to demonstrate the look and the placement of a solar array within a subdivision or, to the neighbors. We, of course, do, with our proposals, right, preliminary designs to kind of show how the solar panels are going to sit on the house. And a lot of people, when they think of solar panels, they have that gut reaction because they might be thinking about solar panels from decades ago, or they might be thinking about solar thermal systems, which, are also great. They do hot water heating, but they do sit up at an angle, and they do, they're a much different look than the solar PV panels, which lie
flat on the roof,
flat across the roof. Many times can't be seen. In Missouri recently, there was just a favorable ruling for a couple of people who had solar installed on their home in 2011, right? And they had been in kind of a legal standoff for many years about whether or not they could keep their solar panels. So I will say that in Illinois, there's an Illinois Solar Homeowners Rights
Bill of Rights.
Bill of Rights.
Yes.
Thank you. And that says that basically your homeowners association cannot, say that you cannot they cannot restrict you from having solar panels unduly. So if the only available surface that they'll allow you to install on is, say, the north face of your roof, and that's not going to work well for your energy production, then you have this Illinois Solar Homeowners Bill of Rights that you can point to. In Missouri, that kind of effort is still developing. So,
okay.
But yeah, we're always happy to show off the attractiveness of the solar panels that we've installed to make the positive case for.
I'm assuming that by now, kind of like the public perception has changed, and people don't like. That was a guy I knew who was like, "That's ugly," right? And I think by now he actually lives in Colorado, and his Facebook is him hiking and stuff all the time. Right now, he probably has solar on his own house.
I was going to ask how that battle went down.
Yeah. So solar, you guys are all about solar electricity. That I think back in the day there was a bunch of like solar water heaters that people had on their roof. Is that still a thing? You guys don't do that, right?
We don't do that.
Because you would just solar electricity, and then if they wanted, they could get an electric water heater, right?
Correct.
Okay, so
there you go. Problem solved.
Yeah, one of our realtors has these old solar water heaters on his roof that they're just not using anymore. I think I guess that maybe that technology kind of came and went.
They had more challenges, and I just don't feel like they had the pull yourself up by your own bootstraps kind of willingness to make it work. So
work through the challenges.
Yeah, okay. Correct.
Okay. So do you mind if I jump through some of the questions I got from Facebook?
Mm-hmm.
I think we've sort of answered some of them, but so my dad was my first question. He's asking, are there any options other than the large panels? And so I don't know what he's picturing in his head. Maybe he doesn't know about the new stuff, but I don't know can I bring up the Tesla solar roofs? Do you guys know about that? What do you think about that? Is that even a thing yet? Can you even buy those yet?
My fellow project developer quoted his own home for the Tesla shingles, and the cost for it was 3 times more than what your standard PV solar module would be. Tesla and all their ingenuity are also equally brilliant in marketing, and that they're capable of capturing the imagination of America with upcoming technologies without ever saying how much it costs.
Yeah.
Who is going to actually be doing the installations, whether it's them or the channel partners. So like a lot of new technologies, especially with energy, it tends to hit Australia and then the coast first before it becomes financially viable in the Midwest. I would imagine it will be many, many years before the built-in photovoltaic Tesla shingle type installations become viable in this area. We're still very much in the early adopter stage of your standard PV systems.
So, but are the we'll call them PV panels, I guess. Are those kind of like rigid, or do they have ones that are sort of flexible now? And why would we care if it's on our roof, but maybe if it was on the van or something like that, then it's more important?
So the standard size of them, it's a metal frame, it's tempered glass, it's about 3 foot by 5 foot. Now they do have your rollout solar. It's like a laminate almost. And those have a shorter shelf life, and the efficiency is lower, and then they're more temperamental to heat as well. So you still all got the guys with their pocket protectors and glasses and white coats trying to figure out like the next solar panel, so to speak. But that's all still in the experimental stage. In terms of making
slimline design,
yes, yeah.
So when you talked earlier about how kind of the industry's kind of agreed on a technology, it was something else other than exactly how the panel's going to be,
and the materials used.
The materials used,
correct?
Okay. All right. Next, we have a guy who said we got solar 3 years ago, and I love it. I'd be curious to know if the technology will soon allow us to self-generate energy with charging stations in the home.
Battery systems are increasing. I think in the next 6 months, I have 2 battery projects that are slated for construction. So, one, it's a system called Pica. They're out of New Hampshire. It's a real slick battery. The question is always how much is a battery going to generate for my home when the grid does go down. And it's always hard to gauge. It depends on how much energy you currently use and what you want to supply and how long you want to supply your loads. And then I have another system, LG Chem. So there's available batteries out there. Tesla, like the shingles with its batteries, has the marketing for it. They've done installations in some areas, but your Facebook poster is correct. It is not. The Tesla Powerwall is not available in this area, but there are other really good products that look slick and operate really well and are reasonably priced for the battery market.
But so to me, what I'm thinking is this battery is important if I'm worried about the environmental benefits, right? Or the batteries may be important if I'm doing off the grid stuff. But that thing you mentioned earlier, where it's like you make some Sunday and then you can use it Monday, kind of makes it so you don't really need the battery functionally, right? I mean, you still want it for the other benefits I just talked about, but
there's more energy independence if you have a battery. There are
because you can save up energy, you can bank it, so to speak.
More the spirit of independence, knowing that you are reliant entirely upon yourself. Now, what you have in areas like Hawaii, where energy costs 4 times as much there. Homeowner could install solar, get their money back in 2 years, get a battery, get their money back in 4 years, and then they can call their utility company and say, I don't need you anymore. We are far, far away from that. And what you have in certain markets that you don't have here, like in certain areas of California, Arizona, and Nevada, which is when you come home from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., energy is more expensive. So if you've stored energy from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. or 2:59 p.m., what you're doing is you're pulling from that excess energy you stored in the battery bank. So now you're powering your home with, say, 15 cent energy, 15 cent kilowatt energy when everybody else is paying 40 cents a kilowatt hour energy. But in our market, the cost of energy doesn't change based upon the time of day. It only changes based upon winter or summer.
Yeah.
So, Mike, if Mike would buy one of these batteries that you mentioned, he should contact you, but will he be helping to sort of help that technology get better? I mean, the more people that buy these batteries from the companies you mentioned, the better their technology and their construction and processing and everything would be, I guess, right?
He'd be supporting that market. Anytime we get an opportunity to buy a couple different battery systems at a time, our costs go down. Therefore, the cost to the client go down, and if the itch he's really trying to scratch right now is he likes technology and that excites him, that's really the primary driving force for batteries right now.
Okay, another Mike asked, what's the shelf life of a panel, which I think we've answered. You're saying 25 years, right?
It will still produce 80 to 83%.
After 25 years?
After 25 years. What the solar industry considers a module that's producing below 70% as dead, so to speak. But there are modules out there that are 30, 40 years old that are still generating energy. It's the inverter that we expect to go out, around year 13, year 15. That's the piece of equipment that will have to be removed and installed with a new one. The modules, there's no moving parts, right? Again, it's that sand doped with 2 different chemicals. You just leave it alone and it'll do its job. The inverter is mechanically doing all the work.
Okay.
He also asked if they still produce if they're covered by ice or snow.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. So the solar modules, if they are totally covered in snow, will not produce energy. But what does happen is when the sun does come out, the second a little bit of the solar module gets exposed, now you have a black solar module capturing the heat of the sun, and now you're going to get just enough electricity flowing through it where it's going to start to get a little warm, and it will melt the snow or ice quicker than other areas. Typically people can still be hands off. If someone wants to get a broom and brush off the snow, they can. But then
kind of like your windshield. If you let your car go long enough, it'll actually just melt away.
It'll just go away
versus actually scraping.
Yep.
All right, my wife asked what sort of cost goes into installing. What is the return? I think we answered those questions, but I just thought I'd mention her because it's my wife, Molly.
Obligation.
Hi, Molly.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Anything we're missing, guys?
Have you guys seen or done any projects in regards to your group buys where maybe a subdivision comes together and does a solar park? I don't even know. Like it takes a lot, say an empty lot, puts a bunch of solar panels on, helps do the subdivision, or anything in the city. We have lots in the city where I kind of think the neighborhood could buy one from the LRA and put a bunch of solar panels on it, and it really kind of supplies the neighborhood. I know it would be a huge undertaking to get everybody involved, but have you done any of those projects?
So when we have participated in group buys, just a little bit of background on that concept, and then I think you're kind of marrying it with the concept of community solar, and community solar and group buys can be related because, right, the foundation is a community of people coming together to achieve
maybe I'm not using the right word, but a group of people come together, buy a bunch of panels to power the neighborhood. Yeah.
And so so the thing that needs to happen for a group of people to draw electricity from a single array, kind of independently within their own organization, is virtual net metering. And we don't have that online in Missouri quite yet, right? But in Illinois, we did just bring on virtual net metering. So we can have a scenario where there is a large solar energy array, and then groups of people, they kind of subscribe to a certain set of solar panels, and then you get credit for what your solar panels produce, and then you have energy savings that way.
Okay.
Just like net metering, but not on your house. And actually, there are, cooperatives, electric cooperatives have been some of the first utilities to kind of, because they can make their own rules to a large degree with their net metering and their billing policies. So they've been some of the pioneers with community solar, both in Illinois and in Missouri too, I believe. So that's the one side of it, and yes, it's possible, but it's not quite fully realized. It's in the near future, I'd say. And then on the group buy side, we are actually this is something that we've seen people really get into, because you can achieve fantastic savings with pooling your interest in solar, your community interest in solar, and receiving, group education. You get, like we're doing here in this podcast, you can come together with your community, and you can listen to, non-partial third party provide solar energy education, whether that is, an organization like Renew Missouri or like the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, who has spearheaded a lot of these group buys. And so the foundation is education, so that everybody kind of comes together. And then the second part is a low bulk purchase price for individual solar installations. And those can be on homes and businesses. But that's
the bulk.
Yeah, like a bulk buy.
Yep.
And so you all come together, and a lot of neighborhoods and municipalities, they can be any scale really. They do occasionally go out for competitive bid. So, you'll put the bid out to your local solar installation industry cohort, and then you'll receive some bids, and then you'll pick your solar installer based on, years of experience, certifications, Straight Up Solar and other solar installers. We hold NABCEP certification, which is the kind of the gold standard for solar energy installation expertise, and ability to provide a low cost per watt installation price.
Okay.
So you can achieve pretty good savings that way.
It sounds like there's so many changing technologies and all these different government programs and all these things. So it's a lot for the normal person to keep up with. So we appreciate your company kind of being in existence and focusing on that and providing all that information instead of just saying, we sell solar, right? So I think you guys are kind of the resource for anyone to come to. And we've really appreciated having you on the show. Yeah, the educational resource for anyone to come to. We've really appreciated having you guys on the show today. And so if anyone has questions, just go to straightupsolar.com, right, and reach out. And thank you, Doug. Thank you, Emma, for being here today.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, Adam.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thanks, everyone, for listening. So if you have any further questions or concepts that you want us to have on the podcast, just reach out, podcast@hermanlondon.com. Thank you very much, and take care.